Thank you very much, Mr. And then it's my pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you very much for the 比利时中国经贸委员会. I'm saying that in Chinese, and then the English name, and then the European name you already know. And so I look around here. I see many of you are very experienced people, especially Mr. Demay, and is a very known HR advisor and opinion leader here in Belgium. But then, like I already explained to some of our participants just now, the key here tonight, we have 45 minutes. I'm here not to talk about the what, but then to talk about the how. Because in HR, this is about recruitment, it's about development, it's about the retention, and it's about many other labor issues, but then this is all the same what. But then when we are in a different place called China, and then the landscape is different, and then our focus will be focused on the how. Like we always talk about, we paying someone for the know-how. We don't pay someone for the know what and know why. And then I'm here, and then just be the messenger, and then to bring you what is going on in the market, and then what does the landscape look like in the landscape of the talents, in the landscape of the talent competition. Okay, so what you will all have receiving a copy of the presentation, so I don't have to say too much about myself anymore. And then what my focus here is that why this topic? Because in the past, when the FDI, foreign direct investment, just flooded into China, late 90s, and then the early 21st century, at that time, people talking about market access, talking about capital, talking about strategy, and then as after 30 years, FDI coming into China, and they already get a foothold into the market, and now the war is about whether you have the market inside and whether you can compete and then win over your local competitors, because the market is crowded, it's very crowded. And what we are saying here is that I have some data here, and then so the first message is here is importance, the great increasing importance of China, because in the past, in the early 90s or early of 21st century, let's say, at that time, most of the company, when they come into China, they called China a strategic market, because at that time China is very small in terms of their global market share, maybe 1%, maybe 0.5%, maybe zero, and then you want to start it. But nowadays, after 20 to 25 years of market development, most companies, they have completely changed this landscape. For example, Volkswagen right now, China is their biggest market for Volkswagen. And I brought a newspaper on my flight from China to here. It is a full page from the Volkskrant. It is in Dutch. And then it has a news about in 25 years, Volkswagen grow its sales from 10,000 cars into 2.8 million cars in China. And then the gentleman who runs the China operation, he's also sitting in the board. And this China has become Volkswagen's #1 market. The same thing will also go to a company called L'Oreal, you all know. And then so China has become the second largest market right now. And then it is their determination and then to turn into China market to be the #1 market in the coming 3 to 4 years' time. Okay, so if we take a look and then we see there is a kind of a critical point in the past when the China revenue is relatively smaller than 5%, you can call that strategic market. And nowadays, and then a lot of companies, especially in the European Chamber, many of our members, their companies and then growing so big, and then the revenue in China already account for between 10 to 15% of the global market share, global revenue. And then that is the critical moment, and then so it becomes from the China market has turned into from a strategic market into a bottom line market. If you cannot make money in China, you cannot make any money somewhere else. So, and then, so when we all see this, and then with the growing importance, of course, the next thing here we will see here is an in organization and what we have, and then with the office building, with these facilities, and then we have the people. So I'm also collecting some information to share with you because this is the information, most of the source of the information from the European Chamber and then American Chamber annual position paper. This is a position paper annually, and then the both chamber presented to their members, to the Chinese government, also to the United States government, plus in the European government. And here in Brussels, especially from the European Chamber, every September is called, this is a knocking the door tour, and then it's a delegation coming from China, and consists of like often is around between 20 to 30 senior executive from our member companies, and then they visiting all the commissioners in Brazil. And then on top of that, they also making a tour to each of the capital city in their own country. And then so to present this paper to the policymakers and ministers. And then so it is, these two chambers are the only two chambers actually the Chinese government and direct have a dialogue and conversation with, and to really understand from the foreign direct investment perspective on equal market treatment, equal market access in China. So let's see. Just now we're talking about the business and the money-making part. High expectation of multinational on China today. I've just put some of the known name. On one hand, and then many of the names are cutting down jobs. On my arrival on Sunday night, I just learned from the Dutch television, and TNT is cutting 4,000 jobs again in the coming years. We understand ING also cutting many jobs, and then an employment rate in Holland already reached more than 7% nowadays. And then so in the meantime, and then we also see that these are the brands and then really are making a lot of investment, and they want to build their market share in China. So this is all the ambition. If everybody is growing, and then guess what are the biggest assets are in great demand? Of course, it's people, experienced people. And then when everybody is on growth, and then the competition intensified, and then of course the labor cost also increasing very fast. Let's see, because in China it's the toughest competitive market in the world, not because it's called a place China, because all your global competitors there, your regional competitors there, and your local competitors there. And especially the Chinese local competitors, they start from nothing, but then you know what is one thing they're very good at. It's called copying and learning. And then, so this is, I'm also here quoting Dr. Idler, this is European ambassador to China, and of his saying here is that what can we Europeans learn from the Chinese And then in doing business, and then one thing he certainly mentioned that he pinpointed that, as Europeans, we can learn from the Chinese how to learn things. And in Europe, we have this kind of innovative, ingenious approach, and then we like to develop our own thing. And then in China, and then so people say, since we do not have anything, why don't we just start our learning from copying? And then through this innovation, and then we can move forward. So they copy things very fast. And then they also, and then because this is a society, already race has been always very much focused on technology, and then has generated a lot of engineers, so they understand, and then they do reverse engineering through copying. So when you only do copying, it's easy to outperform them. But when you have a group of very smart engineers, and then they do this reverse engineering, and then they try to understand the theoretical and then technical mechanism behind your product and the solution and design, then their learning curve is very steep and then it's very fast. So that's why we're seeing Huawei right now. Well, we're having one gentleman from Alcatel-Lucent, right? Many years ago, Huawei was copying Alcatel. But then, since like 7, 8 years ago, Alcatel is copying Huawei. And then this is the game now. And then right now, Huawei has become by far the largest player in their segment in the world. So, because what we're seeing here is that competition is tough, and then on the other hand, because everybody is hiring, so in order to get some experienced people, you have to poach the experienced talent from the market. The market actually, and then for doing this, is that if you want to retain your employee, every year you give them 8 to 10% salary increase, just to keep them, to make them happy, also to not necessarily to keep them very happy, but then to be in line with this inflation. And then so in order to poach candidates from your competitor, you got to pay a market premium, which is often between 30 to 50, sometimes even 80%. And for one company I can really name is it's a German company called Bayer, and then they have a standard formula, and then when they recruit people, and then they say, hey, they get a salary package, and then based on the salary calculation, they automatically add 30%. That is a standard practice. It is, and then so when a Chinese company poaching experienced executive from foreign companies, often they offer double or triple the salary. And there is a Chinese company called 361. They're doing this T-shirt sportswear. You know that you probably seen their logo during the Olympics. They sponsor the Olympics. And they poach some executive from Adidas. And for example, an Adidas executive and make 1 million renminbi a year, and then in order to have the know-how, and so they just offer this person 3 million a year. So with a timeline, let's say, of 3 years. They do not want to have a full also 10 years commitment with 3 years, and then if this person can really bring up the know-how and then helping them, and then with building up the organization know-how, and then the money has paid off. So it's a wake-up call for many of us, and then doing our own things, and then the usual way. And this right now, at this moment, the BRICS meeting is going on in South Africa. I believe it's also going to be a wake-up call for many of us, because the BRIC country right now discussing formulating kind of like a World Bank substitute. So the understatement, the message is, if you guys don't do this, we will. So that's many of the things here. It's go beyond the numbers. The market is certainly getting very competitive, that we already know. The business challenge, the top 3 business challenges right now in China, number 1 is rising cost because the renminbi's appreciation, the currency appreciation. And then I still remember years ago, 1 euro is 10 renminbi, and nowadays it's 1 euro is 8 something. Some time ago it was a 7.6 or something. So like last year, I think the second half last year at one point in time, it was a 7.6 something with dollars, and then it is used to be, and then what rate, and then so right now it was a 10 and 8, and right now all the way up to 6.2 or 6.3. Think about it. And then, so what kind of like a cost structure different now? It's a rising cost because in the past, when you say when the renminbi is cheap, and then you can compare, you say, hey, China is cheap. China is not cheap anymore, but then if you say offer a person a salary, a talent salary in euro or in dollars, sounds like a lot of money. And then according to a European or American standard, but when you convert it into renminbi, it is not competitive anymore simply because the market is going up. So we cannot just compare Europe and China anymore, and then just, you have to benchmark, make such benchmarking against your local competitors. What kind of game plans they are doing that. So this is one thing, rising costs, and the number 2 thing is the human resource constraints, because the thing here is, and then, just now we talked about in the country with 1.3 billion people, how come we're short of talents? Yeah, okay, thanks to the 10-year Cultural Revolution, because the university stopped enrollment for 10 years, no enrollment. The country collapsed and then paralyzed. So nobody actually for 10 years going to university to have education. Of course, in the past was the planned economy, and then also not the market economy. And then so, all the talents start to be educated, to be groomed after 1977. Now, that's why we have a big gap in between. And it is difficult to hire some really experienced, gray-hair executives who really have all the knowledge and the experience, and then to really run the company. And often you get a lot of young people. The next thing is domestic competition. We're talking about this domestic competition, the domestic player, and then they grow so fast, they start coming out of the market and then buying someone in Europe, in America. Like we just, last year or 2 years ago, there was a Hunan-based company called Sunny. And then for 700 million euro, they bought Postmeister. And Postmeister right now is part of Sunny. So this is one of the just one of the stories. And then there is also a Chinese, there was a dairy company also bought a medium-sized dairy company in Holland. But then this whole thing really coming out, and then in the coming 5 to 10 years, and then because the Chinese, most of the Chinese companies, they have a large domestic market because they have the scale. And then once you have the scale, and then you got all the capitals. On top of that, they also receive government subsidy to go abroad. So we'll see in the coming 5 to 10 years a growing number of Chinese companies coming out in Europe, in the US, and then buying Western companies. And then often the way to do that is also and then to run the business the way they are running instead of the way we are running now. So this is a lot of things, and then these are implications. But let's talk about exactly what are the things exactly in HR. How do we do it? How do we do things differently? for the rising costs, how do we combat with all these challenges? One of the things right now, because in the past, when you have in the marketplace, when labor is cheap, and then you tend to hire a lot of people, that's not the case anymore. And the game plan start changing now. And then make Chinese companies, right now we are talking with them, and then they were thinking about having automation and robot doing the repetitive work. And then they want to increase efficiency. They want to invest in systems. And then automation, many of the things, and then to really, and then start doing another upgrading of the industry and know-how. So what we're seeing here is that no, more and more people, even though still a lot of people saying they haven't started doing that much, but then already a growing number of companies start to put investment in this efficiency programs. Mr. Demay, and then, talking about recruitment and retention and then HR, and just now, and you also talk about exactly how do we attract people to join us. Okay, the game here in the past, when you are foreign-owned company, and people, you have a kind of premium, a privilege, and then you're saying that I'm working in the foreign invested company. That was something that you get a better salary. Not anymore, because of the foreign company in China is an overseas branches, and there is only so much you can do. There is only so much complexity of the organization. And that can be. And on top of that, there is only so much limited opportunities. The Chinese talents right now, and after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of experience, what they want to have a new platform, and then they can do something they never done that before. And if they can be provided with this kind of opportunity, they will be more than glad to do so and then walk away. However, in the meantime, many of the foreign invested companies, the hiring managers still have the mentality and then saying here, prove to me you have done something before. You have all the experience in XYZ job. And then I will give you the chance to do this job. And then the Chinese talent was saying here, look, I have done that before. Why should I do it again with you? So if I cannot get if I cannot get what I want, of course, I will walk away and then tell them they offer me money. There is always a certain kind of truth you can read from the salary report, annual salary review. And then on surface, you say, people interpret it, and then okay, the talents walk away because it's a short of money. Actually, the understatement, they're saying that I actually get a better chance and to work in this new place. I get a promotion often. They get a new title. If it's supervisor, and then when they go to a new company, they become a manager, or manager become the director. Or if in the past you only directly in charge of one department, you get a chance to become general manager. And if you're a general manager, you probably get a job and then to run a business unit, whatever. So it's like this, the talents here, they are excited, encouraged by the new things, new scenario, new event, new initiative, something they've never done that before. And then that will be the key setting point to really attract them to be on board with you. So the key message is, yes, okay, the compensation part should be competitive, should be in line with the market. And then, but then the critical thing is the job content. Is the job really interesting for the talent? Instead of, only you think as a hiring manager, the job is interesting. It's like who is looking at the job. And often we have the hiring manager, they tend to insist on their own opinion. Yeah, isn't that true everywhere? And so we will see here. So with this, where do they go? And often they go to the local companies, because over there they got to offer this chance. They never got that before. They got a lot of, room to jump and then up.
We still operate somewhere. Is that for professional employees mostly, for administrative employees?
Both. Because yes, it's both. And then what we're seeing here is that because at the very beginning, and then we see a kind of interesting roadmap. And when Chinese companies start poaching employees from a foreign invested company, at the very beginning, years ago, they start from the salespeople, and then marketing, and then HR. Right now, HR in great demand because of building system, and now they are more or less taking a look at the people who really at the executive level, who can really run the show for them, CEO level also. And then so you really see that, and then those are growing more and more important. It's not necessarily to be in administrative roles. The other thing here is then the R&D thing. That is also interesting phenomenon, because I work a lot with the chemical companies in China, a lot of European chemicals. And then when the technical people and the sales people coming out of the market, they meet a lot of competition from a domestic player. But then in chemical world, I see, because the R&D, you put a lot of money to do R&D, right? So how does the Chinese company solve this R&D issue? Because the lack of talents. So this is one of the tricks they do. And this is a kind of like an open secret known in the market. What they did is then they go to the head office, they go to US or to Europe, they get the retired people who are in formula development. Because, and then these people have all the know-how, and then so, of course, they don't have to do something illegal, but then the thing here in formula, and then we all know, you not necessarily, you don't have to be 100% the same, but then, that's at least a part of the solution. Yes?
In other fields in Europe, we do sometimes the same.
Yes,
when we hire a former civil servant of the European Commission or whatever, of a high level, retired, and who's playing some role within the company.
Yes. Exactly. Like Huawei at one point in time hired Mr. Joachim Hakma, the former Consul General of the Netherlands, to Shanghai to conduct its, government affairs job in Europe. And of course, Huawei is a company, they had a tremendous, challenges in the US because of the government relationship part. And then thanks to Joachim Hakma, and then at least they're doing everything rather smoothly so far in Europe. So.
The reason I asked the question.
Yes.
Because what you mentioned is mostly professional employee sales, marketing, HR, R&D, management, CEOs, etc. Right? If you look at a manufacturing environment, migrant workers, the blue-collar workers, in our factories, some of these rates actually would apply almost per month. Even. Turnover, if you're in an industrial park, several big operations together, you will almost, some of the challenges you can get is having these percentages for your blue-collar workers.
Certainly. Yes, certainly. You're absolutely right. I was talking to the retailer called Li Ning, and to their HR people. And of course, and then they are in big loss recently. And their staff turnover on a yearly basis is between 50 to 80%. Think about it. If you have 50% staff turnover rate in 1 year or in 2 years, you got a brand new company. If you have a staff turnover rate of 80%, you get a brand new company every year. Yeah, but then what we're saying here, the soul to run the company, this is always apply. Let's say it's the 80-20, By the end of the day, you can run the company, you can run the factory with a team of people. Let's say 20% of the, your total work population. They are the critical people. And then the rest of the workforce is really helping you adding the scale. So that is what I'm saying here. But then the critical part here is that you are missing the general. It's not that difficult to find the soldier. but then it is extremely difficult to find a general. So, well, that's the other true. So the other story is that because right now we're saying here is that look, when you recruit people, you both recruit the local and expat because the market is crying for talent at all kinds of skill set. So more or less, and then it's the Kangpengpeng issue is on top of the list because of the rising labor costs, because housing is expensive. And the kids' education very expensive, and then the number are crazy. Take a guess. If you are a European expat, and then if you need to send your children to an international school in Beijing or Shanghai, guess how much the tuition fee will be? For those of you, you already know the number. For those of you who don't, take a wild guess. Can you give me some numbers?
Brussels is 12,500 euro in Brussels.
Brussels, 12,000. Double that. Actually, and then so in average, that is about 200 to 230,000 renminbi per child. International school. To learn 4 plus 4 is equal to 8.
And you can go to us, we have an executive MBA.
Exactly. You can also go to Harvard for that money, right? And then, so this is, and then I know there's one American gentleman, he has 7 children going to American school. And then his company has to pay for that bill. And think about it. What kind of cost structure that is. So this is one thing. The other thing here is housing. If you bring them, the entire family, take a wild guess. Like if you have a couple with 2 children, and then you're working for a company called IKEA. And then both of you working there, you got the children going to international school. And then you need to have a 4-bedroom house. Let's say roughly 380 to 400 square meters with a garden in Shanghai. Think about what will be the rental cost. Take a wild guess. 80,000 what? Okay, it's not too bad. It's roughly about 50,000. Okay, but then if you like the gentleman, like I was talking about, the American gentleman, he has a large family, and he has to live in a big house, and then the big house costs are between 80. I believe that was around 100,000 renminbi.
We also get messages that there are a lot of empty houses in China. So
yeah, but then there are certain kind of communities you want to go, and then there are certain kind of community you don't want to go. Because the whole thing with the expat family is that they always want to go to a community where they can meet some other people, then children can play together. So, and people always target on several communities, and then some compound, and then so that compound, and then have better management, and then and then have all these things, facilities, and that is the price you have to pay. Think about it. And then on top of that, you have to pay a driver, an R&R, and then their tax benefits, everything. Think about it. So, and then these are the cost of structure, and then of course, and then the living environment, all kinds of things. And then if you say complain, then people asking for money. So who else does not ask for that? Because here in Europe, the education and everything is we just take for granted. There's many of them, we get a lot of good education. Actually, the country, the state paying for that. And over there is company paying for that. Because you can, of course, you can, the alternative, you can send your children to local school. But then, yeah, and there's another, and then different story, right? So we're really saying here is that, cost, you have to really manage the cost. In the past, expat package is kind of common, but right now, as market intensify, and often right now you can also get a package in between in order to negotiate a better deal for both the individual and the company. Right now, often you can get something like a local hired expat. They give you a lump sum fee. Let's say, okay, the rest of the thing, you take care of that. So this is also the growing trend right now. So by the end of the day, when you have all the computation, you have all the cost, and then you have, in the meantime, you also want to grow the market. Exactly. So what do you do? Exactly. What is the fundamental issues here? Because what we're seeing here, this is only one thing, and I'm just on the vertical axle, is that the revenue of the company. And then that we're really seeing here is that when you grow from a very small size into a company, let's say up to 0.6 billion, that's a 600 million. And when you have this kind of size, the focus is more or less on attract and a retention. Because when you're building up the scale, let's say if you're that was in. But then most of the companies, some of the large companies, when they are into the market, growing bigger, like say, like the company called like Akzo Nobel, and then they're already over 100 million. No, they're already over, they're already over 1 billion renminbi. And then they want to grow the company into the 2 billion or 2.5 billion. And now here, is the game rule also change that, and then you need to maximize. You need to maximize your human resources. It means you need to have a sustainable process, a system, and to do that. In the past, when you're just building up the market at the survival stages, and then you just you just hire people and then let them do the job, getting the sales, getting the order, and then just to make profit. And then so at that time, it's more or less getting the people in. Once you over that threshold, and then into phase 2, that was a phase 1 thing. The phase 2 now is really talking about efficiency, innovation, and best practices. And then so that is a tremendous challenge because you barely get the people, like just now we talk about the administrators, and then so they just got enough experience in running this routine recruitment and then practice the thing. And the next thing they have to get used to is like how to improve the system, how to build the system, and then how to doing more things with less resources. That's another new game.
With less people.
Yes. Adding people, adding capacity is not the solution anymore. Now people have to think of how to do things smarter. So this is another challenge. But then if you take a look, this is a classic roadmap of all the organizations' growth in the past, let's say, 20 years. From 92, when Pudong developed, and then they start to build the Pudong into the Shanghai's Pudong into a CBD, into a financial whatever center. Hopefully that will be done by 2020 when the renminbi is fully convertible. Right now the currency is still not convertible. But let's take a look. This is a classic roadmap all the organizations have been through in China. You first start with a sales office, and after that, the sales are doing pretty okay. You add a manufacturing facility. And then after that, you build a China holding, like a Baycard is doing its China holding and Asia holding. Same thing, huh? And then you organize all kinds of organizational functionalities into the organization. And after you have the China holding and become one legal entity, and then you can coordinate with all the other commercial activities, and then lobby with the government. The next thing comes out is the R&D. So now we see a growing trend of many multinationals are beefing up its R&D facility and centers. Philip brought in several aspects. In the past year, I believe they in 1 year, they grow the R&D scientists into several hundred, and then they add I believe, I'm not 100% about the number, but they're roughly around 600 scientists. And then Bayer right now in the currently it has like 150 people in their R&D center. In the coming 3 years, probably they want to grow that into 250 people. So in the meantime, L'Oreal also building up its R&D center because they're hiring globally and all kinds of talent. Because, for example, what do you call it, toxicology? And then when you're doing this kind of trial and skin thing, and then somebody had to really find out exactly what sort of like a toxic thing, implication to their makeup, whatever. So when you one go, they want to hire 6 PhDs with a toxicology background. And it is impossible in China to find. And a lot of recruitment specialists does not even understand what toxicology means. So now you see in 20 years' time, the organization grow from one simple function into a multiple function, into a very complex organization. That's another challenge we're facing. And then the development roadmap in the past 20 years is like, we're also going to do this from globalization to localization, that we all understand, but then to local innovation. Just now I talk about, this facial mask thing, this extended cars thing, and then to reverse innovation. So I was talking to somebody from Unilever, and then they were talking about counterfeiting, fighting counterfeit in China, and then because of the shampoo. And so they find out, they say, hey, some of their local competitors, how they were, selling their shampoo and then as a brand, and then how they creating the shampoo. So they got some engineer and then some scientists, and to understand, how can you make a foam? And then so actually they were doing that on the local company and then into a washing machine. Because apparently in a washing machine, and then with like a certain kind of, this kind of, what you call that, stir, and then you let the things come out, the foam coming out. The theory is exactly the same. So the only way they're doing that on a relatively smaller scale. So by understanding the engineering know-how, they were doing this reverse thing, reverse engineering, and now they're doing a lot of reverse innovation. So here, this is what we see, the growing pain. So by the end of in the end, what we're saying here is that if this is the situation, how do we do? How can we do things differently? So we're saying that you have to define your strategy. And then still remember Michael Porter or competitive strategy, or, you talk about, there are always the three strategies we're talking about: cost of leadership, focus, differentiation. Now, the same strategy coming into your HR strategy is that if you cannot compete on cost, what can you do? You cannot do either or. You cannot do both, but then either this or that, and then you got to make your call. You have that decision to make. If you have one piece of butter and you have to spread it on so many pieces of bread, you can spread the butter on one piece. You can also spread the butter on 100 pieces. That is your call. The budget is only so much. How do we manage the money? How do we manage the budget? And where do we put the priority? It is not an HR practice issue anymore. It is a management decision. And often that decision cannot be even decided by the Chinese CEO often. Has to be decided at a global level. Now we take a look, and then I'll give you a picture of the brick market and have an overview. I'm sorry I'm missing this. This is Harvard Business Review article, and then I borrowed it to share with you. And then so at that time, when they got this article thing, and then there was no ads for South Africa, and then it is only Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And here is how China look like. Because on the entry level, at the junior and the fresh graduate level, it's a surplus. Yeah, this is the of talents of people. The supply is bigger than demand. The moment you are reaching out, let's just say from middle management, not only even middle management, let's take a look even from here. It's some experienced specialist. And then it's already start all the way up. It is a demand bigger than supply. People with experience are constant on supply, constant on demand, I'm sorry. So that's why recruitment is a very big issue. And then just want to share with you one fact. In Shanghai alone, we have more than 3,000 headhunting firms. The competition also tough. The margin is getting lower, and then often the mission almost like a mission impossible, and then because the company give you a job profile, and then they want everything. They want a sheep with 5 legs. Of course, you cannot find them. So, and make the headhunting firm's business also very challenging. Now we see this. This is the thing, because let's take a look. And then the thing here is that on the entry level, all the time you have to do massive recruitment. Some companies, I still remember InBev, they have to do this kind of management associate from like 10,000 applicants all the way by the end of the year, and then by the end of the day, they only select like 20 people. And they give people the offer, and then often some people some really talented people, they get like 3 to 4 or 5 offers in their hand. They can choose to join you or not to join you. That's often the case if you get very sharp people. So we were saying here that, but then the thing here is that, think about it, if you want to select people from 10,000 all the way to 20, what kind of process you have to go through, and massive. And then that's the kind of number game we're talking about. You also have to do a lot of recruitment channel management, because like companies, they have to do because you have so many headhunting firms, but then you have to do something yourself, something you do with headhunting firms, something you do with a referral, but then it is about channel management. You got to make the channel management right for your talent supply channel. That's the thing. And then you got to have a lot of process and robust process and practice it in place, because you want to rely on some of the experience of the HR people. It's not there. A classic profile of an HR manager in China is a young lady in her 20s, and then late 20s, let's just say, who speak good English. The last job probably is a secretary to the general manager, because with HR you're doing a lot of confidential information, and then that person should be has to be trustworthy and easy to communicate with. And often it was a lady, and then it is a young lady, and then they can do things fast. They're very flexible. They're very easy to communicate with, but they do not have the knowledge in the people side, the people inside. And then they are not experienced. They do not have business experience before. So that's the challenge. And then that is today's HR. This is also the biggest drawback. It's lagging behind the competency and then most of the HR managers. And then, of course, when you have headhunting firms, headhunting firm also has a lot of inexperienced junior people. And then so they can talk to the candidates, but then it is difficult sometimes for them, most of the time, for them to understand the big picture of the business perspective. So now you really see this is a tremendous challenge here. And then that's why I'm saying that if you do not have a robust process and practices, and then you want to rely on the experience of each of the individual, and then that's very dangerous. I'm not saying things will go wrong all the time, but the chance will go wrong is rather big instead of small. And then the other thing here is that when you finally get the people into the organization, you have to do right on the onboarding, because and then you have the kind of like a probation time between 2 months to 6 months. And then during this probation time, and then what we're saying here will be is that like people can decide not to join you anymore. They can make a decision to go somewhere else, and often it happens. And then if they do not feel welcome, if they do not feel the company has a robust process, and then give a lot of workload to them, and then things are not done systematically, there you go, and then so that it's going to backfire. So all in all, what's saying here is, so you have to know what kind of game you are in, and you have, once you get them, in order to retain them, and you give them proper training, and then either on technical training or on professional skills training, or on managerial skill set training, or on leadership skill set training. So it is a kind of not only training, also opportunities, events, and then you're providing the platform for them, and then to really to learn and then to perform. So you cannot rely on saying I put the money here, I put a salary, and it is a good salary. It is a person, you're experienced people. You are supposed to know how to run that. If that is the understatement, I'm afraid the chemistry is going to be really difficult to be built between the two parties. And then the thing here is that if you do not show commitment and investment in the people there, and then if you do not show this commitment in the talents won't give you the commitment. I thank you very much.